If you believe a child cannot learn to read, they won't.
Yes.
So the first thing is, how do we see the child sitting in front of us?
Mm-hmm.
And my thought and what I say to people in an audience is, instead of seeing them as a learning disabled child, see them as future rocket scientists.
Yes.
The research is fairly clear. The children who struggle the most are given the most reductive teaching ever. That causes problems for kids. Reductive meaning reduced to letters and sounds.
Welcome, Lois. I'm so excited to have you on A Mother's Guide Through Autism.
Bridget, I am delighted to be here.
Well, we were just visiting and we have so many fun things in common, like orange butterflies. And I absolutely love what you're wearing. And we instantly connected through butterflies. So I am sure this interview is going to be really, really enjoyable. And for our listeners, this is going to be great knowledge. And this program is all about knowledge, hope, and inspiration. So if you're driving, you can listen to this recording again. If you're at home and you can grab something to write with, you might want to take some personal notes for yourself. So I would love to just jump right in, if that's all right. And if you would just give us your background story about your beautiful son, Nicholas, as a child.
As we share the journey, you get, as you happened, as you said, we get thrown into our journey.
Yes.
My son was born on the 8th of the 8th, 1988.
Wow.
And so he went to school. No, first up, he had ear infections from age 8 to 18 months. I didn't know the impact of ear infections on a child and on their brain growth, and particularly on language development. Problem number one. He goes to kindergarten and preschool, fine. And at the time, we're living in Brisbane, Australia. And I said to the kindergarten preschool teacher, I said, how do you think he'll go in school? And she said, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's a bit slow, but he'll be fine. We sent him to grade 1 and he was terrified of going. At the end of the 6th day of school, I spoke to his teacher and I said, well, how's he going? Because I was a bit worried about him. And she threw up her hands and said, well, you know, I don't know how I'm going to cope with him. He's so far behind. He can't do a thing. He stares into space most of the day and he just sits there. What I didn't know was that she then shouted at that 5.5-year-old child every single day throughout that year. This woman would have been in her late 50s with over 30 years experience of teaching in 1st and 2nd grade.
That's horrible.
Yes. And what we don't acknowledge and we don't say is when we leave children in such a traumatized state, it's a lifelong impact.
It is. It is. And we don't realize it. How did you finally realize? What did you do? That's such a shock.
Yeah, it was an incredible shock. At the end of grade 1, he gets tested and the testing reveals he can read 10 words. He's got no strengths and he has a low IQ. That's not very nice. I went to the meeting by myself, thankfully, in a way, and I came home and told my husband this, and my husband is a professor. He's an academic. And he said to me, those scores are a lower bound. Nicholas can look like that on any given day. And that really gave me some confidence. It gave me, you know, a place to put that testing and not be overwhelmed by it.
Yes.
So that was number 1. And then he went into grade 2, even though he couldn't do these things, he went into a grade 2 because my husband had study leave in the next year. And we were leaving our country, our home of Australia, to go to Oxford, UK for 6 months. And the idea was that Nicholas would go into second grade in this year. And then when we came back from Oxford, he would return to that teacher. So he would repeat second grade. So he had the same teacher. So that's what happened. So we go to Oxford, and I said to Nick, do you want to go to school here? And I watched my little boy. I watched the blood drain from his face, and he just couldn't say anything. But just watching the blood disappear from a white face is, he looks like a ghost. And I thought, that's it. I'm not sending him to school. And I'd prepared for this, and I prepared by buying a series of books called Success for All. They were an abject failure.
Yes, I can relate to stuff like that. Absolutely.
Isolated words on the page. He's meant to decode them, and gets to the end of the page, go back to the first word, and he's got no clue. He has no clue. And what happens, unfortunately for me, is I get frustrated, and do what the normal, we blame the child.
Yes.
You're not doing, you're not. My mother-in-law was with me at the time, and she said, Lois, put away what's not working and make learning fun. I needed that input. I couldn't see a way out of my hole. I just didn't know what to do, but I knew he had to learn to read. And this appeared to be, but to say, you don't have to do that, Lois, was unbelievable.
I love that.
Yeah.
That I got goosebumps. That really resonated with me, because I coach moms, and I'm saying almost every single mom I've worked with needs to hear what you just said.
Yeah. In other words, love your kids for what they are and do what they enjoy. And it was transformative.
Yeah.
I wrote one poem. It was about a mug on a bug. And we read the poem and found the rhyming words, said it again and again and again. And he illustrated it with my mother-in-law. Took forever to do, but he did it. Because that was successful, we did another and another and another. Every day, he's then relaxed. He's laughing. He's smiling. He's remembering. And then I was given a series of books to help me with decoding, which were phenomenal, and they made a huge difference. So we did decoding 1 hour a day, 3 or 4 days a week, to help him get the absolute basics to do. Consonant, no, not even consonant blends. We did TH, SH, and CH with short vowels only at the beginning of the word and the end of the word. It took us 2 months, 3 to 4 days a week of doing this, an hour a day, multi-sensory. But for him to get it, that's how long it took. And then the other 2 months, we ended up consonant blends and short vowels. So for the most of the time, we're doing this stuff, but he's remembering it.
How did you know how to do that? That's just fascinating to me.
That came from the series of books called Hear It, See It, Say It, Do It. One person spoke to me in Oxford, and she asked about our family, and she said, I've got something for you. Nicholas, I said, Nicholas isn't learning at school and da-da-da. And she said, my son's dyslexic. You might like these series of books. One person spoke to me. That one person changed my life.
That is powerful.
In the meantime, I'm writing a poem every single day for Nicholas. And then you come up with the double O's, as in cook, look, and book. Well, you might think of cooking and using a cooking book. I thought of Captain James Cook, the last of the great explorers. So I wrote this little poem. Captain Cook had a notion there's a gap in the map in the great big ocean. He took a look without the help of any book, hoping to find a quiet little nook. Very simple poem, big ideas. Because that was true. Captain Cook had an idea, had a notion, there's a gap in the map in the great big ocean. Well, The world knew there was a gap in the map. They knew Australia was there somewhere, or that continent was there, but they didn't have the completed mapping of the country.
Mm.
Did he do it with a book? Well, no, he couldn't, because it's across the Pacific. There's no guides. And then as he went up the east coast of Australia, he didn't know the Great Barrier Reef was there, and he was actually caught inside it. So it gives you lots to talk about.
Yes, just that is fascinating. Yes.
And as we're doing this, Nicholas says to me, can I see Captain Cook's original maps? And he asked me twice before I called up the British Museum and said, where would they be? The question he asked did not come from a child with a low IQ.
Absolutely not. Mm-mm.
And the next thing he said was, who came before Captain Cook? I said, that's easy, Nicholas. That's Christopher Columbus. And he said to me, and who came before Columbus?
Mm.
I haven't even thought about who came before Columbus.
Yeah.
And what it did was set me on a search to answer Nicholas's questions. And the deal with this was, there are very few books written for 7-year-olds. And Nicholas has a language problem. If I read anything to him, the words went right over his head and he just shut down. So I was required to read the information, get out the idea that I wanted, put it into a poem. Now I can share it with him.
What a process. But it worked.
But it worked. But it worked.
Yes. And so you know he is dyslexic, you know he has auditory processing disorder. So that makes it even more challenging, like what you're talking about. It's like, well, I can't read aloud to him. That doesn't work. But so it's that to me is really amazing, because, and we shared this in our pre-conversation, that both of us being teachers, finding ways to reach children is what it's all about. And that does not come without challenges or a lot of effort. And to manifest his learning that way really is remarkable. So I just have to stop and say that as a teacher, wow, that is truly remarkable. So you're making this headway with him, and you have discovered a way for your son to learn with both of these learning disabilities going on all at the same time. I'm curious, and I'm jumping a little bit, but where did the autism come in?
He's on the spectrum.
Right. So was that initially, did you know that then when you were doing this creative teaching method?
Well, all you knew was that Nicholas was different.
Okay. Yeah.
He's just different. And I'll come back to that, because it becomes really important, actually, because the way children on the autism spectrum think.
Yes.
The other component that went with the poetry was that poetry wasn't happening in isolation. We were seeing things. We're in Oxford. Do you know Oxford, UK? Does it mean anything to you?
I know of it.
Yeah.
I have not had the pleasure of a true experience there.
Well, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Oxford's the center of the world, the center of the academic world. There are 3 places that we know of, in the English-speaking world. We've got Harvard in the UK, US,
Yes.
Cambridge, and Oxford.
Yes.
Many, many amazing people have been there. With that comes a lot of artifacts. So I'm writing these things, we're seeing them. It's not just that I'm writing about it. We're seeing them. And when Nicholas asked this question, who came before Captain Cook and who came before Columbus? I did my research. I found out who came before Columbus. And Nicholas says, can we see a Ptolemy map? Now, Ptolemy was a guy who lived in Alexandria in Egypt in 240 AD. He never left the shores of Alexandria. And his task was to map the known world at the time. So he took the information from sailors and drew the map, drew the world's first map. We have north at the top of the map because of him. We're in Oxford. We go to the second biggest library in the UK, the Bodleian Library, and we go to the gift shop and say, where would we see a Ptolemy map? The lady reaches round from behind the counter, picks up a book of maps and says, here's a book of Ptolemy maps. That'll be £5, please. So there's so much. And what you just did then, that's exactly what Nicholas did. And it adds that emotional learning. We're not learning in a book. We're learning by doing and seeing.
Yes. Yes. And that's when you really do learn and you don't forget it. Like, I won't forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have this child that gets the tactile, the kinesthetic, and there it is.
And you make the connections.
Yes.
And you've got depth of knowledge. And obviously, when Nicholas, if you talk to him, even today, he's very slow with speech. The thoughts are going a million miles an hour in his head, but to get the thoughts to the mouth and the motor planning required and the sequencing of the words to get them all in the right order is a huge effort on his part.
Yes.
Even today, as a child, it was worse. So he looks slow. And we judge children by how quickly they think and they speak.
I agree.
So anyway, we return to Australia. I visit the lady who'd done the testing the year before, and I say to her, we've had such a fantastic time in Oxford. And she says to me, well, I've spoken to the reading teacher. And she said he's gone backwards. And in fact, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching. And I still struggle to say that.
I struggle to hear it. I cannot imagine the pain and the shock of hearing that an educator say that to you.
I went back home and I mulled over it. I went back to school and I said to her, you can call him whatever you like, but if he is the worst child you've seen in 20 years of teaching, don't expect him to learn like everybody else. They were the best words that anyone's ever said to me, because she gave me permission to try and do things differently.
Yes.
He's not like everybody else. Don't expect him to learn that way. Don't hand him a piece of paper with a word on it and say, learn it. He's not going to do it. What do I have to do then to help my kid learn this? Now, this is where the autism comes in. That very afternoon, the reading teacher sends Nicholas home with 2 sentences for the word saw, S-A-W. And the first sentence is, I saw a cat climb up a tree. And the second sentence is, I saw a man rob a bank. Nicholas read, I saw a cat, and he stopped. He went back and he said, I was a cat, and said, no, no, no. I had a cat and I asserted a cat, and just handed me the paper. What's happening? The teacher has provided only the abstract meaning of the word saw.
Yes.
I saw a cat. Nicholas has the concrete meaning of the word saw. Either a concrete meaning or the word to cut. And he knows you don't cut a cat. And the second sentence is so bad, I can't even say it. And what's the additional problem with this? The additional problem was our privileged family has just spent 6 months in another country. And she's talking about cats climbing up trees. And in fact, in Brisbane, Australia, where we live, there are no cats. There are birds, there are bats, there are lizards, there are possums. Cats are inside because cats killed wildlife. So why are we talking about cats climbing up a tree when we should be talking about, Nicholas, what did you see in England? Did you see Captain Cook's original maps? Did you take a saw with you when you went to see Captain Cook? No! Memory. You give the opposite meaning. You give the concrete meaning in a position where he's been in and he knows there's no way in the world we took a saw into the British Museum.
Yes.
This is autism. Autism's or people on the autistic spectrum see the world concretely, which is why we have a real struggle teaching them abstract ideas.
Yes.
The idea of a label, the worst child you've seen in 20 years of teaching, and I saw a cat climb up a tree, drove me to become a reading specialist. I became a reading specialist, and the paper that I read in my studies way back in 1998 is entitled Beyond the Deficit Theory, written by an Australian professor, Professor Brian Camborne, and in it he said, why do children fail to learn to read? Children fail to learn to read because we give inadequate demonstrations. I saw a cat is an inadequate demonstration of the word saw. And then secondly, we fail to give demonstrations that the child connects with. The reading teacher failed on both counts. But why was that so important? Because when the reading teacher saw my son struggling, why didn't he learn to read? She didn't think it was her fault. It's because the child had a low IQ. So we blame the kids rather than explore, what do I have to do to teach this child to read? That academic paper stays with me today. I have numerous copies of it. It's because I never want to forget it. Because when children fail to learn to read, it's not their fault. It's our job to teach them.
Yes. I would say that's true for anything and everything. When a child is not getting something, why do we keep trying to get them to get it the same way over? You can do it as many times as you'd like. I'm pretty sure Nicholas still wasn't going to get it that way. So why not take a different route? I completely agree. It's a cookie cutter way to teach.
It's also, I do a lot of reading in the world of literature and language. And the guy I like at the moment is Professor Stanislas Dehaney, and he's a neuroscientist and the author of Reading in the Brain and How We Learn. And he says two things. He says, we forget what it's like to be ignorant as a teacher. As a teacher, we forget what it's like to be ignorant. Mm-hmm. Which is why when the teacher gives the word saw, I saw a cat, she doesn't see a problem with it.
Right.
And secondly, what a child cannot perceive, they cannot learn.
Exactly. That is, I just want to stand up and start clapping. Yeah, that is all truth. Those two things are some of the smartest comments that I've heard, statements that I've heard in a while. Absolutely. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
And that's hard to say, to find 100% truth in something. So, wow, that's powerful. And as a parent and a teacher, it really is enlightening to be able to help, right? As you help teach, as you help, because what you do is you do, well, you could tell us what you do, but what I've read is you do tutoring specifically for these learning disabilities, and you can tell me where I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. what happened was after that, I became a literacy specialist, and then we went to Lubbock, Texas. Our family moved from Brisbane, Australia to Lubbock, Texas. In Lubbock, Texas, fascinating story. Nicholas went from the bottom to the top over
Wow.
the 8 years that we were there.
Wonderful.
And many reasons for that. And it wouldn't have happened in Brisbane, Australia. Fascinating. I went there, and I'm crying all the time, aren't I? Because we moved. Anyway, I meet a mother whose 13-year-old son is non-reading. And that child has spent 4 years in a phonics-only reading program and came out non-reading. And I thought, I know what to do. I know what to do. And so she contacts the school district, and I get employed to teach him over the summer. I work with him 10 hours a week for 9 weeks, and I get him reading. At the end of the summer, the mother writes to the school district and says, you employ this woman or I sue you. I got employed. And
I bet.
that I'm now taking children who failed all reading programs and teaching them to read. I'm teaching under ideal circumstances, small groups, every day or every other day, children from age 8 to 15. I teach them to read. No one's saying you've got to use this program, that program, there. Teach them to read, Lois. That's what I did. And that's where I got my expertise from.
Yes, and I can see that, because that's a wide range of ages and abilities. And I guess this is my teacher brain wondering, was there a commonality between these children?
Yes.
And what was it?
They're all are terrified of coming to me. What's this woman going to do to me?
Oh.
Irrespective of the age, they want the world to open up and swallow them.
Mm.
The commonality, the first commonality, is that not one of those children had been engaged in literacy, in learning, engaged in the learning. They're given a program, they're told to go through it. And my first student I told you about spent 4 years in this program, sat at the back of the class or in the class and repeated the words the teacher told them. He could recite the rules of the language. He could not read. The commonality is they're not making any connections to anything. And it's no different to Nicholas with I Saw a Cat.
Yeah.
Our standardized reading programs that we think will work for the most vulnerable kids, and they don't. Number one in reading is not decoding. Number one, if you haven't got an engaged student with you, there's no learning. Number one, a child must be engaged with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Secondly, they need to comprehend everything, every day. Read and comprehend words, sentence, phrases, sight words, everything. They need to know that they've got them, and we don't care. We just go through the process and go through the motions. Most teaching occurs on a level that if we teach this, whatever we're teaching, most kids will be able to fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they'll get through. With children who are as severe as my children, there's no filling in the gaps. It's like a sieve. You've got the sieve, and there's holes all the way through it. And when there's holes in the language and the learning, the kid won't get it.
Yes. Yes. But I think what I'm hearing, and my hunch is what other people who are listening to this are going, with that just offers so much hope, though, because if you have that many holes in how you're learning or not learning, then that means that let's just go back to the drawing board, and there is a way. Not to give up. There's always a way, is what I'm hearing.
A mother came to me a year or two ago in tears. Her 16-year-old son is non-reading. We've spent $100,000 on my son. Spent 4 years in a school for dyslexic learners, and my child is not reading. What do I do? Let me see if I can work with him. It's fascinating because the first thing I do with students is I ask the mother, and it's via Zoom in COVID times, I ask the mother to write the word TO on a piece of paper. And I say to the kid, what's that word? And he says two. And I say, now give me a sentence with the word TO. What does the child say? He says, I've got two lizards the same. Has he given me a sentence with the word TO? No, he hasn't. He's given me a sentence with the word TWO.
Yeah.
Then I say, give me a sentence with the word FOR. And he said, I have 4 grey shark's teeth. Everything I do is foundational. If children don't understand the difference between TO and TWO and FOR and FOUR, it doesn't matter what you put on top. The foundations of the language are pillars that have fallen over before you've even started.
Mhm.
Because reading doesn't make sense. That's where I start.
Yeah. And that's fascinating because that is, it doesn't seem like it's very big, but it's huge. It's huge. It changes everything. Like, I'm just sitting here going, that's so simple, but yet so big to instantly be able to go, okay, I know where to begin with this child. He's learned pretty much nothing as far as language and reading goes. And so I'm just curious, how old was this guy?
16.
Oh,
16.
16. Oh my God.
16. And in the
Oh
night.
my gosh. Yeah.
And what was fascinating, one of the next things, well, with this particular child, anyway, I wrote down our conversations because I'm just getting to know him and writing down the conversation. Then I sent it to the mother and had her printed out for him, because the mother was sitting with him every day, every minute to do anything.
Wow.
So I sent it to him and I said, would you like to read that? And immediately the mother's shoulders go up and the son's shoulders go up.
No.
There was panic. And I said, oh, no,
Yes.
no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I want you to take a pen and just circle every word you know.
Hmm.
Immediately, everyone's panic has dropped. I just got to circle the words I know. And as you know, we've just had this conversation, haven't we? I can read. And they're circling all the words. And then I'm dyslexic. In my typing, I'd made a mistake. And the mother said, oh, Lois, you've got a mistake here. You've got an error. And I go, oh, yes, of course. I do that all the time, don't I? And the kid laughed. Now, we've dropped the temperature in the room again. Now we can just relax. I'm not the only one who makes mistakes. And he read the whole conversation.
Oh, that makes me want to just like, oh, that is so emotional, because I can feel, as a mom with a child with a disability, it's just like, oh, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful.
His name is Matthew. And on my YouTube channel, you can hear him read a poem, read a couple of poems. And this is a few years ago now. But to see him grow from I can't do anything to I can laugh reading these poems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can do it. And it's funny.
Yes.
Then what I do is I took a poem that he loved, and the poem was A Certain Lady Kangaroo. A certain lady kangaroo is such an awful grouch. She pesters everyone she knew and fusses about her pouch. And then it's all the things that she's got in her pouch, you know, a hairbrush and a nail brush. And as I mull over a lot of things, and I said, Matthew, I've got an idea. We need to do a certain young gentleman a certain young gentleman has challenges with reading. And we'd go on like this. I can't remember the poem I wrote. But when you're adapting it to meet the needs of the child, it changes the outcomes.
Yes. Yes. And there's such a bigger picture. Yes, it's thankfully he can read and comprehend, but it's much bigger than that. It's how they will go on and live their lives. It was what I'm hearing, because now not only can I read and comprehend, but I feel better about myself. I have confidence. My self-esteem has grown.
Yes.
And that's the part that makes me want to cry as a mom.
Well, I cry because my son was 7 when we went through this journey.
Yeah.
Not 15.
Yes.
And being 7 and being able to then join the mainstream and take the information in, it's life-changing.
Yes.
It's life-changing.
Yes. And everything that I've read about your son, and he's thriving, and there's so much I want to ask you. But like, oh my gosh, okay, so calm down, Bridget. What I want to know is, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned on the path of helping your son?
The one thing I had to do was believe in him.
Ah. Oh, yes.
You know, we think of reading, and you can get onto these Facebook pages, it's decoding, it's this, it's that, at the other. If you believe a child cannot learn to read, they won't.
Yes.
So the first thing is, how do we see the child sitting in front of us?
Mm-hmm.
And my thought, and what I say to people in an audience is, instead of seeing them as a learning disabled child, see them as future rocket scientists.
Yes.
The research is fairly clear. The children who struggle the most are given the most reductive teaching ever. That causes problems for kids. Reductive meaning reduced to letters and sounds.
Yes.
I know there's much more involved with that. So that's the very first thing, is what's our mindset about the children sitting in front of us?
Yes. Yes.
And the second is, if we don't engage the child in learning and engage them, it's not about saying you're going to do this program and you're going to use these words. Reading is about engagement. Engagement is critical. Do the children want to sit in your class, or are they there because they have to?
Yes.
And every single word is meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Every word. And if you read my book, I found so many fun ways to teach. And when Nicholas was in 2nd grade, I sent work from home to the reading teacher to say, this is what I'm doing at home every single day. And that lesson, it's the lesson on would, could, and should. It's available on YouTube. Is, you know, transformative, because kids have failed and they come to my class, and then I've got a shoebox.
Yes.
We haven't got, we're not doing it. This is different.
Yes.
This is different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Teachers require more knowledge of the reading process than we expect. And when we think we only have to do letters and sounds, or, you know, reading is all about phonemic awareness, yes, those things are critical. They are not what we have to do 100% of the time.
Yes. I think this conversation is very important for many reasons. And one of those is, it's not because I'm a teacher, you're a teacher. It's not to say that there aren't powerful, great teachers. I think it comes down to about how teachers are being trained, and not being able to be aware or have an understanding of what it is. I would say if I had a brand new teacher in front of me, I would say relax and enjoy the children for who they are. I know the curriculum's important. I know we have this pressure on us to make sure that our kids are testing this way and that way. I guarantee you test scores would go up if the teacher was enjoying teaching and not so fearful and stressed out about getting through the material versus how you engage. Exactly what you're saying, engage the children.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Because it's depth of knowledge. It's not superficial knowledge that I'm after. It's depth. I want kids to read it and reread it. Every time you read a passage, you gain more comprehension. You gain more decoding. You gain this wider idea, and you make more connections with other components.
Yes.
Culture, a child's culture becomes important.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah, you and I could probably talk for the rest of today, because we're teachers at heart, moms at heart. And we just want to see these parents and children thriving, and just hopefully what this episode does for anyone that's listening to it is to truly give them hope and understanding that please don't give up. Please look at your beautiful child and know that there is hope and inspiration. And I, first of all, your book, let's talk just briefly about that, because that's important. An important piece to what we're doing today. I love the cover, reverse. I love that.
This map here,
Brilliant.
map is the Ptolemy map.
Oh, love.
When I saw it, I drooled. I just drooled, because it's the world's first map.
Well, I've ordered your book. I have not received it yet from Amazon, but I have ordered it. I'm in love with what you've done. I'm in love with the book cover, and I haven't even read it yet. So I have ordered it. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to share it as much as I can share it, because it is powerful, and we need to be able to share this and help as many people as we can through your work.
It's a story. It's an easy read. And people, I think one of the most important things is they've said to me is I couldn't put it down. And that's what you want. You couldn't put it down. And it cost me a fortune, because I'm dyslexic and I don't have the writing skills that I need to write a book, or I didn't have. And I needed to work with an editor to get a book that was publishable. Otherwise, you wouldn't have read it, despite the story being so good. Yes, what else was I going to say about it? It does take us through the journey from the beginning to the end, but it's story form, so it's an easy read.
The fact that you're dyslexic and you're a published author, I can't even tell you how much hope and inspiration that message is out there for anybody to hear.
I would love to have had 2 or 3 books, but the cost of it is just too great for me.
Yes. Well, I believe that this book, I can feel it, is going to change, or has changed lives. This came out in what, 2017? Is that right? 18. Okay. Yeah. So it's still pretty new. I am also, I'm a new author, actually, my son Joseph and I did not, and I'm not dyslexic. I did not think that the writing process was going to be so, it really is an accomplishment. And then to add a diagnosis of dyslexia to that is really amazing that you were able to do that. So congratulations, not only on mastering that, but also really caring enough to go through what you had to go through to get this book out into the world.
I want to add I want to do lots of things, but I want to add the update on this. Can I tell?
Absolutely. Add the update.
Right. Nicholas graduated with his PhD from Oxford in 2018 in applied mathematics. After that, I said to him, Nicholas, I don't know what happened in first grade. Could you tell me? My confident, articulate son sat in the chair and cried.
Oh.
His tongue went round and round in his mouth and he couldn't say anything. And that's when, for the first time, I recognized grade 1 was trauma and we needed to deal with that. Right. Okay. And then I said to him, I can't, sorry, Nicholas, I can't deal with that. But tell me what happened the next year when you and I learned together. The tears disappeared and he smiled. And he said, I remember the poems you wrote to me. And he named the poems that I wrote for him. And he said, and the mapping taught me to love learning, and I never want to stop learning.
Oh.
Then he started giggling. And it's the 7th.
Oh, this is so powerful. I'm so emotional. Oh, you're grabbing my heart.
And he said to me, you wrote a poem about a witch's spell. I said, I did. And he said, I don't remember the ingredients, but I remember it was just so funny. I didn't put that story in the book because I deemed my poem too silly and too not good enough to write about. It took his telling me that story to acknowledge that learning is so much more than dealing with letters and sounds. I wrote the poem, The Witch's Spell, to learn the SP words, spit, spot, spin, spell. And I remember clearly that when a friend would come to the door, Nicholas would run to the room and pick up this book and turn to the page of the Witch's Spell and say, read the ingredients. And as I went, oh, he went, laughed, and he's laughing and laughing. When we teach like that, we change the life of children.
Yes. Yes, the life. That is, yes. And that's the bigger picture, the bigger meaning. And that's why this is such an important conversation that you and I are having today. And I hope that anybody that's out there, and this podcast is, for mothers, but it's for anybody who has a child, a grandchild, is a teacher. This is an important message for us to talk about and to keep having these conversations to bring awareness and then hopefully change.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Oh, well, you got me on this interview. I thought, boy, I should have had some tissue handy, but I didn't. Little did I know. Oh, so wonderful. So
it's a powerful story.
Yes.
Because we write children off at the age of 5 and 6.
Yes.
They're at the very beginning of their lives. And we should never be doing that.
Yeah.
We've got to support them. And this idea of testing the death, what's the point? So that someone can have a data collection point? It's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just wrong.
I absolutely agree. And I keep, and it's not, it appears to be getting worse.
Yes.
It's obvious. There's millions of red flags. It's obvious that our educational system is in dire need of reconstruction. And it just appears that we just keep putting Band-Aids on it and coming out with these new great principles of teaching, and it's really just the same thing. It's just called something different, where there's no true change happening that I can see. And if I'm wrong, I'd love to hear from somebody that points me in a direction that says, hey, we've got it going on over here. There are pieces that are probably good, but we really, as an overall educational system, really need to start making a difference here. And I'm on board with you. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I've already written legislation and I want to change teacher training, but so anyone listening out there, let's get this, let's make these changes for the world.
For the world. Yeah.
For the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that anyone who's listening is going to want to know how they can find you. So how can people find you?
I have a website, loisletchford.com, www.loisletchford.com. You can talk to me on my email at lois@loisletchford.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram.
You're everywhere.
Trying to be. I'm finding it very tiring, and I do teach children. I do charge, but I give you a 40-minute free introduction just to talk to me and tell me where you are, what you're at, what you've tried, and see if we can work together, and if your child is willing to work together with me, with someone. Or can you do it from home? There are multiple ways that we can do things, because if we can get parents to do it with the child, and we give them the skills, it helps.
Yes, I agree. It really is a team effort, and it's not to put more on parents. It's just that if we can reinforce and help at home, I think it makes a huge difference. Is there anything else that you want to mention before we go?
Believe in your child. Believe they are capable of anything. And I think that becomes the most important component of all that I do. Mm-hmm. Believe them, love them, care for them, give them an environment where they are happy. Because if they're not happy, they're not going to learn to read.
Yeah. Words well said. Words well said. Well, thank you so much. It's been such an honor. What a great power. I've really enjoyed this interview. So thank you for being on A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. And for those of you that are listening or watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe this YouTube channel to get the word out, so we can reach as many moms, as many parents, and as many people, teachers out there that are looking for hope, knowledge, and inspiration. I'll see you in the next episode. This is Bridget Shipman, Mother's Guide Through Autism, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.